You know that soft, fluffy dough that you use for things like brioche or challah? That's enriched dough. It includes things like butter, eggs, and milk. It's a little bit different from bread dough, but if you can learn how to master it, you're gonna feel like a rock star. I was introduced to kolaches from a friend who lived in Texas. They're very popular in Texas, and they're soft, enriched dough with a little bit of a filling, and I was blown away. I wanted to kind of replicate what I had there. All-purpose flour, some sugar, a little bit of salt, and our yeast. So I'm just gonna mix those up just until they're combined. I have a 2-cup measuring cup here. I'm gonna do all of my wet ingredients in this and then add it to the dry. So I have 2 eggs and 3 egg yolks. I have some melted butter, some whole milk. Lemon is a big flavor in these, so there's some lemon zest. Whisk this up. I'm gonna put this on low and just drizzle in these wet ingredients. So I'm gonna let this go for about 2 minutes. I just want it to be combined. Now I'm gonna turn the mixer up to medium high. So I'm gonna let this go for about 8 to 10 minutes. That sounds like a really long time, but when you have an enriched dough, you've got eggs, you have milk, you have butter. All of those things are heavy, and if you don't develop the gluten in the flour, it's not going to give you enough rise. So as you're mixing this, you might think, oh, it looks like it's completely combined. It's done. It's only been like 3 or 4 minutes. It's not done, and let me show you why. We want it to kind of cling to the hook, and we want it to be nice and shiny and come together, and you'll see that as you're mixing it, there'll start to be some webbing happening around the hook, and then it will start to pull away from the side of the bowl. It's probably another 4 or 5 minutes. So as you can see, it's thick and shiny. It's kind of holding a little bit of a rope. So this is done. I'm gonna just push all the dough into the center of the bowl, and you can see why you have to put it in the refrigerator overnight. This is very loose and it seems really wet. You won't be able to work with it at this stage. I'm gonna cover it and I'm gonna let it sit at room temperature for about 45 minutes to just kind of get the yeast to start to activate, and then I'll put it in the fridge overnight. It's gonna double in size and it's gonna be easy to work with. One of the things I realized, I wanted it to be sweeter at one point and I added more sugar, and I couldn't get it to rise, and I couldn't figure out why. I didn't know if the room was too cold or I was letting it rise too much, and then I did some research and realized if you add too much sugar to a dough like this, it will inhibit the rise. We're gonna make 12 kolaches with this. You can kind of divide this dough any way you feel comfortable. I usually divide it in half and then into 6. You'll get 12 balls that are about 2 1/4, 2 1/2 ounces. I do like to weigh it because I like them all to be the same size, but if you're not that particular, you don't have to do that. So now that you've portioned out all of your dough, roll it into a ball, and then using a cupped hand, swirl it on your counter until you have a nice round ball. And then we're gonna put them seam side down on the baking sheet, 3 across, 4 down. So these are ready to rise. These are gonna rise for about an hour to an hour and a half. They're gonna puff up, and then you should be able to touch them with your finger and it will leave a little indent when they're ready. I'm gonna cover them with a piece of plastic wrap that has been sprayed with some cooking spray. If your house is really cold, you might also want to add a kitchen towel to that. And that will help them rise a little bit quicker. So there are several ways to fill a kolache. One of the more popular ones is with a cream cheese filling. It usually has some lemon in it, so that's what we did. A lot of times too, it's just fruit. So we have 8 ounces of cream cheese. You want to bring that to room temperature so you can stir it around easily. I have some powdered sugar, 2 teaspoons of lemon zest, 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. The filling, when I developed this, was a little bit of a problem. I kept seeing that maybe it had egg in it, so I would add an egg or add an egg yolk. I would try to get more lemon flavor, so I'd add more lemon juice. And I would bake them up, and the cream cheese would just come flying out of the kolache, so it would cover the entire thing instead of having like a little pocket in the middle. So I realized over time there were a couple of things that worked. So one of them was not too much liquid. The other was the egg was just not necessary. The sugar and the lemon zest and the lemon juice was fine. And the other important thing was it really needed to be refrigerated, because if it was at room temperature, that would kind of make it more likely to kind of spill out of the sides of the kolache. Having said that, if that happens to you, it's still going to be delicious. I don't know if you've ever made cream cheese frosting, and it's kind of right where you want it, and then you mix it just a little bit more and it turns into a liquid. So try not to play with it too much. Just get it combined and stick it in the fridge. The next thing I'm gonna make is an optional little crumble that goes on top. It kind of adds a little bit of crispy edges to the kolache. It's a little bit of flour, just a little bit of butter and sugar. Mix a really small amount, but that's all you really need. You just want to mix it with your fingers till you've combined it. You want to have some little clumps, as you can see. And then I'm going to throw it in the fridge, and then I can make them a little smaller if I want, once it's really cold. And the last thing we want to get ready is a little bit of an egg glaze. That will make the kolaches beautiful and shiny and kind of brown a little bit on top, but also will help that crumble stick. So I just have one egg. You want to add a little water to that egg wash because it's easier to brush on when you do that. I do love a baby whisk. I love baby utensils. So let me show you our balls of dough that have been rising for, I think these have been rising for about an hour and 15. I'm going to pull this plastic off gently. When I touch that, it leaves a little bit of an indent for a second and then it comes back. That's how you know that they are ready to shape. So you're going to take 2 fingers from each hand and you're going to put them in the center of the kolache, and then you're going to pull them in opposite directions. So we're going to do that with all of the kolaches. I think you're kind of afraid when a dough rises like this to play around with it, but you really do have to pull these apart. So I kept not really making a very big hole. I think that was part of the cream cheese spilling over debacle as well. This is when we want to brush just the edges with some eggs. Now we're ready to fill these. This is our cream cheese. As I mentioned, it has to be refrigerated. See how this is kind of stiff and cold? So I'm going to take about a heaping tablespoon. So what I like to do is put all the cream cheese on first, and then I'll divide it up evenly if I've got too much in one or too little in another. Take that same spoon, and I spread it around a little and make a little divot in the middle with the tip of the spoon. They all have a little pocket ready for jam. I've got cherry, apricot, and blueberry. I'm just going to pick it up with this spoon. I'm not going to measure it, but you just want to put a little, spill a little pocket. Use whatever you love. It's the great thing about baking. And now I have our crumble. As you can see, it's been refrigerated. I can make the crumbles just a little bit smaller because all we're going to do is kind of sprinkle that around the edge. You don't want to put too much because you don't want to weigh the kolaches down, but it's kind of a nice little detail. And here's the other exciting part about these. A lot of times when you make something like this, it has to rise again. And then you feel like, no, I just want to bake them and eat them. You don't have to let these rise again. They go right in the oven, 350 degrees, middle rack for 20 to 25 minutes. So we want them to be puffy, golden brown. Check these out. Aren't they beautiful? I let them cool in a wire rack for about 10 minutes because you don't want to eat them when they're piping hot, but you do want to eat them when they're warm. Pull them apart. See how soft and fluffy that dough is? You are going to feel like a rock star if you make these because you've learned a new skill. You've learned how to make an enriched dough, which is not complicated, but it has a few steps to it. And you're going to learn how to make a pastry that maybe everyone is not familiar with, but everyone is going to be so surprised when you pull these out of the oven on a Sunday morning. So if you're looking for more rock star recipes like these, keep an eye out for our new book, Milk Street Bakes, out this fall.